Guys, this is Emily Lopez, and today I want to give you a complete beginner's guide of how to miter tile. Now, I want to start this video by saying that I have been on my own learning journey with tile mitering. I am a general contractor. I've done lots of tile in the past, but I've always used a bull nose or like a Schluter edge band, or made my own kind of bull nose for the end, or had some sort of accent strip. So when mitering came up, I always wanted to try it, but usually most of my projects are rental properties and flips and not high-end flips, so it's just about getting projects done quickly. So to take the time to learn to miter has been something I haven't done. So what I wanted to do is put everything together that I have learned in one place. I have been very fortunate to have many people on Instagram who are expert tilers. They're really, really good at what they do. I asked for tips and tricks, and everybody had these great tips and tricks, and some of them I knew and some of them I didn't, but really I wanted to put them all together so you had a guide in one place. So if you're watching this video, it's probably because you know what tile mitering is and you want to try, or you've tried and you want to get better. If you don't know what a tile miter is, I'm going to show you. So if you have two pieces of tile and they butt up together, let me try to find, if you put two corners together like that, it looks bad, right? Like you either have that end or that end, and if you don't have an end piece, it doesn't work. I have seen people finish their tile like this and just put a chunk of grout there, and it doesn't look good and it doesn't look professional. So mitering is a skill set that if you're going to DIY, it looks beautiful. If you're going to pay for a tile job where someone miters your edges, it's going to cost you quite a bit per linear piece. So if you're a tile installer, this is a great way to up your skill set and be able to charge more for a beautiful higher end finish. A miter is where you cut that angle and you cut that angle. So when you put it together, you have that nice little corner, and then you either fill that in with silicone or you fill that in with epoxy, and you can even blend the epoxy to match the color of your tile so it looks really pretty. I mean, the people that do this well, they're really, really masters of their crafts. So I'm going to show you the tips and tricks that I have learned so that you can start practicing and putting it together for yourself. And ultimately, once you know how to do it, it's really just about practicing, because practice makes perfect. Don't compare yourself to the guys and girls that have been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, honestly, they're good because they do it every single day. So just practice. My recommendation is start with an inexpensive tile, because you're going to mess up, you're going to break it, and you don't want to have a really expensive product and have a lot of waste. The other thing is it's easier with smaller pieces of tile. So those big, large format tiles, if you break those or you damage those, it's a huge loss because per piece they're really expensive. So start and practice on an inexpensive product, because you are going to make mistakes and you're going to have to throw quite a few pieces away. So without further ado, let's get to it. Your first step is going to be making your cut to length. If you're using a full piece, perfect, but in real life it generally doesn't work out that way, right? So we're going to make our cut first, just our straight cut on our tile saw. So when I started, my tile saw turns to a 45 angle, so I thought, oh, I'll just plunge all the way through with the 45. The first time I ever tried this years ago, and I was like, oh shoot, that doesn't work. That's not the way to do it. So first you make your straight cut. I recommend making it maybe like a 1/16 of an inch bigger than what you need, because as you know, when you've cut on a tile saw before, it chips the edge a little bit. And here's the deal, you want to have a nice smooth edge so you can grind that down with a polishing pad, but if you cut it to size and then you grind it down, then it's going to be too short. So again, if this is the full size, start with it, great. Or like if this is your cut side and it's going to be covered because it's going to be to a corner, cool, make it the exact size. But first, just make your straight cut on your tile saw. Now you're probably wondering, if you have a tile saw that turns into a miter position, or you can adjust your angle like I do with my DeWalt, why would you not just cut through and then woohoo, there you go, you're done. So I want to show you guys just so you can see. This is a cut that I did just on the 45-degree function on my DeWalt tile saw. It's chipped here, it's uneven, and then we have our 45, well, let me show you this side where it went all the way through. You have your 45-degree cut. If you've ever mitered a corner just doing any sort of wood trim, you know that sometimes it's a little bit easier if you make your angle a little bit smaller than the actual half. So half of 45 is 20, it's not 22 and a half. Yeah, it is. 22 and a half. Sorry, I'm not good at math. It's 22 and a half. But if you go a little bit smaller, so acute, when you have angles, if you remember in math in school, acute is a little bit smaller, obtuse is bigger. So if you make it a little bit smaller, you have a margin for error. If I cut a 45, I cut it right in half to that 22.5 or whatever it is to get a 45-degree angle. If this and my other piece are not exactly perfect and my wall is not exactly perfect, I have no give because I'm gonna run into the back section. If you see the one that I cut by hand, I did it quite a bit, if I hold them side by side, it's steeper of an angle because then I have a little bit more play here to work with. The other thing is you don't just plunge cut all the way through because then it makes it really messy. One section will be okay, one section won't. So what you actually do is you make your cut. Like I said, you're gonna make your straight cut, so we're gonna do that first. And you're leaving a little bit of an edge. See how I have a little straight section first and then my angle starts? Because we can smooth that out. It's not chipped, and that's what you're gonna see, and you're gonna fill in with the epoxy, the gap between it, or with your silicone, but you're not actually plunging all the way through. You're leaving a little face on the front of your tile. So you can't do that if you just plunge all the way through with your tile saw. So sometimes I'll use this to grind it down if I'm using a really small tile, but really I'm cutting my straight line first, and then I'm gonna hand cut with my angle grinder. Another thing I forgot to mention about cutting your miter with your saw, even if you were perfect and you had your 245s and you were perfect, one thing I have found with a tile saw, and you have noticed this if you've ever tried to cut like a really, really, really tiny, not even a strip off the end, but like just kind of shave down your piece because it's just a little bit too big, the blade deflects. So you'll start cutting and then it will be how you want it. You're getting the amount off you want, and then it kind of like bows when you're cutting, and that blade, because it's so skinny, it can kind of go. So I've tried to cut miters, or sometimes what I will do, and when I was starting I especially would try, is I would cut my miter first, like as much as I could with my saw, and then I would go to my angle grinder and finish it, so there was less I had to do. It didn't really end up being any easier. It ended up being kind of like a duplication of work. But what would happen is it would be perfect at the beginning and it would be exactly the angle and cutting off the amount I wanted to. But as I got down the piece of tile, it kind of pushed it out and was deflecting further away. So that wasn't the best solution for me. I found cutting it straight first and then just cutting it on your angle grinder has been my best process. So if you've ever tiled before, you know that you're always gonna try to put your unfinished edge. See how that's the edge I cut and it's kind of got some little fracturing in it from my saw blade. You're always gonna put that kind of in the hidden section. So if you're cutting and you're doing the corner of a shower or a tub surround, you would put the part you cut in the corner that's gonna be covered with the corner of silicone. Obviously you want this to be as smooth as possible, but sometimes, for instance, I've seen somebody tile, they have a shower and then they do like a little 4-inch wall between like a some sort of surround of the shower that's gonna get glass, and they have to miter both sides because they're doing a wrap. Well, if you cut your miter and you have one factory smooth perfect edge that you're cutting off of and one edge that is not as smooth, you can get an angle grinder, a variable speed grinder with an attachment for a polishing pad, a diamond polishing pad, and you can smooth it out and you can get really close to the look of a factory finish. So if you're doing a double miter, you're gonna grind it down. And honestly, you're probably gonna use this grinder. Well, we're gonna use this grinder either way for our miter. In this case, I only have to miter one edge because the other part is going up against the wall. So my starting point is I've cut my tile. This is the size my tile is going to be. However, this is the side I want to miter and I want to have cut at the angle. So remember how I said we're gonna leave a little lip and then start our cut. I make a line. When I first started, I tried to eyeball it and my cut was kind of because it was hard for me to kind of eyeball where I needed to stay. So I make a line, I measure 1/16 inch down and I make a line, and that's where I'm gonna aim to start my cut at and do my plunge. The other thing that it's important to remember, guys, is you're not gonna make this all in one cut. When I had my ideas about mitering, I thought, oh, these guys come in, and maybe the pros do, and they just make this whole cut all the way through. I do a pre-cut, I do a smooth out cut, and then I use my grinder to kind of sand it down and do the rest of it. So don't feel like if you make it and it's not exactly how you want it, you always can plunge at a deeper angle and fix it. You're just trying to give yourself a guide for that first cut that you make. Okay, for my first cut, I'm trying to get it all set up for you guys. If This is hard when you're getting started. You can always clamp your piece down so you don't have to worry about it moving. You'll get to the point where you can usually just hold it unless it's something really small. But because I'm trying to film at the same time, I do have it clamped. You can see my little line that I'm gonna try to start cutting by. And I'll try to do a couple angles so you can see what I'm doing. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera. Another thing is I'm going to try to keep this kind of wet. Obviously diamond polishing or diamond cutting pads are meant to be able to cut this, but if you keep them wetter, it keeps them cooler and they're less likely to chip and have problems. Now some are meant, I think, to cut dry, so read the instructions, but I like to keep it a little bit wet. A couple of things I hope you noticed first. One, I did this in more than one pass, and I think I was able to show that by, you see me cut it first and how janky it looked, and then me cutting a second pass. Now I'm gonna hit it with a pretty coarse grit grinding pad. There are people that are experts at this and they do it so smooth, but even if it's a little tough for you like it is for me, if you do a couple passes, you still can ultimately get a really nice cut and a really nice smooth angle. So don't be discouraged if that's you, because that's me too, and I still end up with a good finished product. It's just something that's gonna take me practice and it's gonna take you practice. So I did my original cut straight first with my tile saw. I went with my grinder once. I went with my grinder again to get the rest of the depth. Now I'm gonna take my grinder with my polishing pad and really smooth it out. Now, when I started, I was afraid to use too coarse of a pad because I thought I was gonna hurt it. But if you use too fine of a pad, too fine of a grit, it's like when you sand wood in your final finish, you're not trying to take a lot off. If you're still trying to take a lot off, if your angle is kind of ugly, like mine is, and you're a beginner, it helps you get more off. So I'm actually using a pretty high grit, or a pretty low grit, like coarse, like 50 or 60. And then if you're ever polishing your finished edge, you're not gonna wanna go that high, but I'm actually trying to take a little bit more off of this angle. So I'm using a really coarse grit, like a 50 or 60 grinding pad to perfect it. Okay, so now I have done my original cut, leaving my flat edge on there. I have done one pass to kind of do my line for my grinder, another pass to get all the way through, and then I have taken my polishing pad with a 50 grit pad and smooth it out. So now I have a nice angle that I can butt up to another piece. And one thing I also recommend is if you're doing a lot of miters and trying to fit them together, I would cut them all first. I know it's really stressful when you have thin set and you're trying to cut and you mess up your cut. And so one thing I found is when I'm doing a lot of weird angles or windows or weird niches or shelves, this bathroom I have has a lot of angles. I'm cutting everything before I install it, so it's just all ready to go. And if something's a little bit off, I can cut it, and I don't have stuff setting up that I don't want to set up and attach yet. So that's also helpful. I'm gonna do a couple more of these with you guys just to show you. So we're gonna do this next one on a time lapse, just so you don't have to wait and sit all the way through it. But just notice that I've started by marking my little line. Again, for me, it's helpful to have a guide. If you're a pro, you're not even watching this. So it's helpful to have a line as a guide. My cut was a little bit less janky, so we're gonna time lapse this one now. Okay, so these pieces are not actually going together. They're two pieces that are gonna go on the same ledge, but I have two cut miters. Here, I'll do it this way so you can see. But then, I mean, you'll finagle them together. Do your angle like that and get a nice corner, and then you just fill that in with silicone or an epoxy, and it's a really nice finish edge. So I got more to do, but let's keep going. Okay, I am actually going to wrap it up because the battery on my phone is dying and I want to be able to get this video edited and out to you guys. So I think I hit on everything that kind of gives you the basics. A couple things to remember: this is going to throw a lot of chips, so I always wear ear protection just because I feel like for like 15 years I didn't, so now I can't hear anything, so I want to protect what I have left. Wear some eye protection so those chips that come out are not going in your eyes. I take the cover off my grinder. I just do that for a lot of projects, so I probably don't even have it anymore. I can't advise you to take the safety cover off your grinder. A lot of people actually like to keep the cover on the grinder and kind of use it as a place to like balance their finger to give them a guide and stabilization. So it might be a good idea to leave it on there. I've seen a lot of the pros keep the grinder shroud on there. So as always, consider safety and think of that. I am going to put a link below to some of the blades that have been recommended to me. I've used different blades and grinding pads throughout this process. I don't really think the brand probably matters, but I will link you to my Amazon affiliate link below and to some of the ones that I've used and that some of the pros swear by and have recommended to me as well. So look at those. If you follow an affiliate link, it always helps my channel. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to my channel. It helps it grow. Please share my videos. Please like below. And if I missed anything or you have any questions, please comment below with your questions. I always respond and answer. And if it merits another video, I'll do an additional video. So thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at emily.a.lopez, and I hope you have a beautiful day. See ya.